I want you to ask yourself a question. I'm going to ask you something, okay? And I kind of expect you when I ask a question for you just to kind of let it land, right? Just kind of chill with it for a second before you answer it, which you should be doing for a lot of questions in your life. And when you answer this, I don't want the bullshit answer you would give if someone's watching, okay? Not the answer that sounds like the person you're working on becoming, but the honest answer. Like the truth that fucking lives in the part of you that knows things before you've decided whether or not you admit them. And the question is this: is the life you're living right now the actual daily life, not the version you describe when someone asks you like how's it going, but is it the life of the person you say you are? Does the way you spend your time match what you say matters most to you? Does how you treat your body match what you say you believe about whose temple it is? Does your financial behavior match what you believe about stewardship? Does the way you show up in your relationships match the kind of person you say you want to be? Does the thing that you are building or not building, maybe, or almost building, or perpetually planning to build, does it match the calling you say you have? And I'm not asking this to condemn you, absolutely not. I'm asking because that gap between who you say you are and how you're actually living is the most expensive real estate in the human experience. And almost everyone has some version of it. Um and I think, it's just not talked about um because I feel like it directly requires admitting something that's very uncomfortable to admit. You're not fully living what you say you believe. And neither am I completely. Not yet. Not perfectly, but the difference between the person who grows and the person who stays stuck in the same patterns for like another decade, you guys, it's not talent, it's not opportunity, it's not timing. It's whether you are willing to look at the gap. If you're willing to name it, and then the part that requires everything from you, that gap, once you name it, you're going to close it. This is called integrity, not the fake it till you make it bullshit performance of it, but the actual closing of the gap. And that's what I want to talk about on today's show. Um, Welcome to the Listen Bitch podcast. What are we like? I'm pretty sure episode 30 for the rebellion. Um, and for me, I'm going to celebrate that because you know what that means? That means 30 days of showing up here, 30 days of choosing to have this conversation instead of letting you sit in uncomfortable silence. 30 days of, you know, being the kind of person who doesn't look away from the hard shit. And that's not nothing for either of us. If you've been here with me for 30 days, I love you for that and thank you. This is the beginning of your integrity. This is the gap between I should listen to things that challenge me and then actually doing it 30 times in a row. Like you're already practicing the thing that we're going to talk about. In case you're new here, I am Brandon Lynette. I am the Voice Authority podcast coach. Your mess is your message. And my mess with integrity has not been dramatic. It has not been a scandal or public failure. It's really just that quiet daily accumulating gap between the values I talk about and the choices I make when no one's watching except me. That kind of integrity gap is the sneakiest one because it does not produce an event you have to reckon with. Okay. There is no big event. It just produces like a slow creeping, unnamed dissatisfaction that you keep attributing to the wrong things. Um, and for today, you guys know I'm going to tell you that the show is brought to you by Super Patch. And I want to talk about liberty today. And this is a patch that I think everybody needs because it kind of takes you back to that homeostasis. It's actually a big connector between my peace patch and then my husband wears the pain patch. Okay. I think this is very important, especially like if you have elderly parents, because this is your balance and mobility um, every single day. Like this should be put on just automatic. You put on your shoes, put on the Liberty patch. Okay. Um, there's something about moving through the world with physical stability. Okay. That kind of correlates with everything you're doing. Because when your body is balanced, you move with ease rather than compensating for something that is not working. So, especially, and I see this like in my clients that have like elderly parents, I'm telling you, that's the best way to show it. But I can, there's tons of videos if you guys want to see the video proof, of a fellow with a cane. He's struggling to walk to his wife. They take away his cane, they put on the patch, and he doesn't struggle to walk to his wife. The elderly person who has the wheelchair for support but can take a couple steps on their own. They're shaky, or even the grandma that's shaky to get on the walker. I have video proof of all of this. And if you're local to me, Liberty is the greatest patch. I keep them with me literally in my bag so that if I see someone in person that I think it could really benefit them, I'll do the test right there in front of you where I put this on. And you guys remember, okay, these are zero ingredient vibrotactile stickers. Okay. It's a registered medical device, but it has zero ingredients. Um, it's braille for your brain. It's just getting your body to connect the neural pathways to be able to communicate to say, you're balanced. It's incredible. It's a beautiful thing. I shock everybody with this. So if you're local to me, bitch, we'll do it. Okay, we'll do the test. But yeah, my link is in the show notes. It's called Liberty. And again, it's a foundation. I say it's a foundational daily patch. I wear it with every other patch I put on because I think it just enhances, my body's natural state to be open to receiving more signals. Um, it's a non-negotiable around here. So anyway, back to the show, you guys. Integrity is not morality. Um, this word has been captured, by the morality police so much so that a lot of people hear integrity and immediately think about obvious stuff, right? Like, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Like, yes, of course, all of that, but that's the floor. That's the minimum. Bitch, we're not talking about the minimum today. Integrity, the word itself, um, in its Latin root means wholeness, integration, the state of being undivided, one thing all the way through, not different things in different rooms. The same person you are when you're being watched and when you're not, the same values on Monday morning that you have on Sunday, the same convictions in the hard conversations that you have in the easy one, wholeness all the way through. And integrity is not just a moral concept, okay? It's neurological. Your brain is constantly below the level of your awareness, monitoring for that congruence between your stated values. That's crazy. I think I just got kicked off of my Zoom, you guys. So, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. And here's the hell about it, you guys. This is probably, one in 100 episodes I do where something happens, and the risk I take by not editing is, do I start over from the beginning? Um, or do I just keep talking like no interruption happened? So if you're in here and you're hearing the pause right now, just know I'm struggling with technology right now, and I'm going to call it and I'm going to keep recording. So what I was saying before Zoom kicked me out of my space here, um, is that, your brain is monitoring for that congruence between your stated values and how you actually behave. There's a region of the brain called, it's anterior something cortex, and I can see it. It starts with a C, and I can't remember what the word is. But it functions essentially as a conflict detector. Its job is to notice that what you're doing does not match what you believe, and when it detects that gap, it generates a specific cognitive and emotional friction, low grade, persistent, hard to name kind of discomfort that lives underneath the daily functioning, and it makes everything feel slightly less satisfying than it should. You know the feeling. It's the feeling of working hard at something and still feeling like something is off, of maybe achieving a goal and feeling less than you expected to feel about it. or being in a life that looks fine from the outside and feeling just wrongness. Is that a word? Feeling wrongness from the inside. That is not depression necessarily. That is not ingratitude. That's that part of your brain doing its job. Okay, it's flagging the gap between who you say you are and how you're actually living. There's This is the thing that changes everything, because every time you close the gap, this is why neuroplasticity is something that I think is so important in these conversations. Every time you do the thing that matches your stated value rather than the easier thing that contradicts it, you're strengthening that neural pathway that makes integrity automatic. Okay. The brain that has practiced integrity consistently builds a default response out of alignment. So it stops fighting itself. So that friction of not feeling good, that feeling of wrongness, that friction gets quiet. And what used to require a fuck ton of willpower starts to require like none, because the behavior has been wired in. The brain grew where the attention went, and now the attention is on wholeness, and wholeness is becoming who you actually are. And there is an integrity trap, okay, that gets a lot of people, and a lot of people don't call it out. Um, Performing, acting like you have integrity, the fake it till you make it bullshit. It's not the same as having it. And the distinction really, I would say, is subtle enough that you can miss it for a really long time, because performance really does, when you've done it for so long and it's your default mode network, it's identical to the real shit from the outside. You say the right things, you're seen doing the right things, you post about the right values, you're known in your community as a person who stands for the right things. And on the inside, again, like that private and the no one is watching kind of spaces of your actual life, there's a gap. It's not huge, not a big scandal, just a little gap, a small, manageable, carefully tended gap between the public person and the private one. And that gap comes with the price. It's not a dramatic cost either, but it's just slow. And you guys know that those slow prices we pay are compounding interest accruing costs that show up not as a crisis, but as a general dimming. It's a flatness in things that should feel alive. It is a tiredness that is not about sleep, a sense that the work, however much impact it has, does not fully belong to you. That you're doing it from a slight remove, a slight performance, a slight management of the person you're presenting, rather than the full inhabiting of the person you actually are in the current moment. Um, and the systems, okay, I'm talking about the system because fuck the systems, they're looking for victims, right? I think that's a Tom McDonald song. I like him, just in case, full confession there. That system that's been running things, the political structures, corporate machinery, the influencer economy. And if you have not tuned into my other show, you guys can go there today, because I'm gonna go ham on this influence um economy, okay? The entire apparatus of public facing identity. It's all been built on the premise that what matters is the appearance of integrity, not the substance of it. Motherfuckers are selling out every day, and it pisses me off. Okay? It pisses me off because you know why they're selling out? Because they're getting money to turn their back on core values and ethics and morality. And they're doing it for money. I don't care how they're justifying it. They get this whole audience of people, and then they flip flop and they crisscross, and they keep everybody in the world of confusion and rage baiting and everything they can to keep the internet divided. And it's frustrating because this is so thoroughly embedded in how institution works. It's like invisible. And every day, like I look today through comments about someone that I just recently, I saw them flip flop, and I've realized they've sold out. Like they have no integrity, they have no values, they're not standing on what they really believe. You can tell they're getting paid, you know. And I'm looking in the comments and I'm so frustrated because nobody fucking sees it. There's a few people who are like, you know, making the same comment like you got bought and paid for, but in the for the most part, people just are sheeping along with it, going with it. Politicians who legislate morality that they don't practice, right? That's a part of this conversation. Corporate leaders who publish value statements that they don't live. Okay. Religious institutions that preach accountability and practice cover-ups. All these media figures, they've built the platforms on authenticity. It's precisely calibrated for maximum engagement, selling out. Okay, deep state. You know, those corrupt elite structures that eat babies and worship the devil, um, operating behind every government in every country, pulling strings from the shadows. They are the ultimate expression of the integrity gap at scale. They say one thing, they do another. They operate in public with one face and in private with a completely different one. They built an entire civilization of managed appearances. And the reason it works, the reason it's worked for so long is that most people have their own version of the gap. And a person managing their own gap is not well positioned to demand wholeness from the institutions that they're actively participating in. This is the rebellion. Okay. You don't need to swallow a red pill or a blue pill because this isn't about politics. I don't care what fucking side you're on. I don't care who you voted for. I want you to rebel against the system because the best thing for our country is everybody taking massive fucking responsibility for themselves, for their health, for their happiness, to steward their potential, to get outside of themselves and become a part of something bigger. That's the rebellion. And the rebellion against these systems, it's going to start in private, in the choice that you make when no one's watching, in the alignment that you practice between sitting in a church pew on Sunday and then how you act on Monday, in the closing of that personal gap that makes you the kind of person who can see the institutional gap clearly and you refuse to fucking participate. You cannot call out corruption in the system while you're maintaining your own quiet corruption, not effectively anyway, not with authority that comes with actual wholeness either. Because again, remember I said it a minute ago, it dims you. You don't have a light, you're not magnetic. No one's going to take you serious. When you're living in integrity, when the private person and the public person are the same, you become genuinely threatening to every structure built on the opposite, and something happens. You're magnetized. People want to be close to you. People want to learn from you. People want to hear what you have to say. That's your superpower. And there, you know, this integrity gap, you guys, I've lived in it for longer than I want to admit. And I'm not telling you that from a place of having fully closed it either. I feel like I'll fucking struggle forever with this, but it's a place of having named it enough that now I can see it. So I'm in this process of recognizing, right? It's one of many one of many of my gaps. I talk about courage, and then I'd be living in safety. Or I talk about building things that mattered, and I built things that were just for enough inside my comfort zone that failure would not be catastrophic. I talked about trusting God with outcomes, and then I tried to control everything that I could touch. I talked about radical responsibility and quietly kept a set of backup excuses that I never needed to use publicly because the public version of my story was always framed carefully enough that the excuses were invisible. Played it safe. The kids, the timing, the market, the season, all legitimate, all real, all also the management layer over a gap I was not ready to look at directly. And the minute this cracked open for me, and I'm gonna say cracked, like where I really realized, you know, it's really not even about that what is the word I'm trying to think of? Um Good lord. When imposter syndrome. Really, that took a long time to get there, but we're everything's engaged now. We're engaged, but imposter syndrome. I used to think that was the problem, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was that I wasn't living in a way that I was telling other people to live, right? And it cracks like the way something under pressure does, it cracked for me. A conversation that I had with someone that I deeply respected. They asked me a question that I've been thinking about ever since. And they said, if no one was watching your life, not your audience, not your community, not your family, if it was just you and God and the choices you make in the dark, would you be proud of that gap? And I gave some bullshit surface answer, but I couldn't give a true answer because the honest answer was no, and I wasn't ready for that. And because the answer was no, that meant that I had been performing integrity rather than practicing it. So this also said, Brandon, who preaches transparency, who is like, I don't hide shit from you guys. That public version of my life and the private version were not the same thing. when I was all about that, right? I was building my foundation of the message there. There's a gap, and the gap that I had a cost, and I'd been paying without fully acknowledging what I was paying for. Okay. That conversation started a process. And again, it's not like a big dramatic, it's not a collapse and rebuild. We went through that, right? Just a daily, quiet, like very unsexy process of closing the gap one choice at a time. Working out when I said I would, or doing the creative work in the morning when I was the sharpest rather than saving the morning for email and doing the creative work when I was exhausted. And then I would wonder why it was not as good, right? Or praying in the morning rather than just thinking about praying in the morning. Um, Reading the Bible before touching my phone versus actually doing the thing. Saying the thing I actually thought rather than the managed version of it. Charging what I was worth rather than the number the fear was settling for, right? Small things, consistent things. And so going through that gap, I just closed one thing at a time. And I'll continue to do that as I start to see those gaps. But this is what happens in my brain when I start doing this. And I'm saying literally, like speaking about neuroscience, the friction started quieting. Um, that low wrongness or dissatisfaction, I think is a better word for that, that I'd been attributing to everything else. The season, the timing, the things are just not quite yet, right? Yeah, it's not my time. Like all of that started lifting. And it's not because the circumstances changed. Bitch, I'm everywhere I go. There I am. Because the part of my brain, and I still can't think of that word, okay? Something starts with a C. That part of my brain stopped flagging the gap, and the conflict detector found less and less to detect. And in the quiet absence of that friction, something became available that was never available before. And the word is clarity. Clarity came through for me. A very clean, unencumbered clarity of a person whose inside and outside matches. And that clarity is now a compass for me. It's what I'm building towards one day at a time. And it's where I'm understanding that I have a gap to close one at a time. And this shit is going to show up like in the health conversation that you have with everyone except yourself, right? You want to know how many years I spent preaching health, you know, drink more water, eat less food, get your protein. I really just got kicked off Zoom again. I'm going to be so pissed if I keep talking, y'all, and this podcast episode does not record. Whatever does get captured is what the fuck you're getting today. So if you're, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. Um, anyway, having this health conversation with everyone but yourself, like, what is the truth? You're listening right now and you know exactly what your body needs. Like, you've known it for a long time. You've read the books, you've listened, you understand the science, you know? And when the choice is in front of you, what are you doing? The food, the movement, the sleep, it's all in front of you. You make the choice that contradicts what you know, don't you? Maybe not always, but you're doing it enough to have that dissatisfaction feeling growing inside of you. And the gap between knowing and doing lives there. And your body pays that compound interest. Financial behavior, that's another great one that this is going to show up at, because if it doesn't match the financial values, what are you doing? So this is going to be the person who's talking about stewardship and leaks money through unconscious spending because the emotional regulation that spending provides has not been addressed at the root. You're buying shit so you feel something. Or, the person who talks about building wealth and then doesn't even charge a good price for coaching because the money wound is still making decisions. And the person who talks about sovereignty, but they've been financially dependent because independence requires a risk that the gap has made impossible to take. Um, Shows up in relationships too, babe. Like where the public version of how you treat people and the private version are not the same. The patience that you perform in public and the impatience you show the people closest to you who get the real version. Generosity you're known for in the community and then you're tight at home, or the presence you offer everyone who needs you, and the distraction that is all you have left for the people who really deserve your time the most. And I know my brain does process the world on a different level of intensity than others. And we carry that incongruence with a vividness that doesn't fade away the way it might for someone that is less wired. The integrity gap is so much louder for most people. The conflict detector fires harder. The dissatisfaction, it's very, very pronounced. And that gap between the stated value and the lived behavior, it's just producing so much more friction, so much more exhaustion, and more of that specific tiredness that comes from the inner battle you're going through constantly. That is not a flaw in the wiring. Like the wiring's doing what it's supposed to, right? Generating enough discomfort in the gap to motivate the closing of it. The sensitivity is not the problem. The problem is when you use the sensitivity to feel bad about the gap without using it to close it. That's the problem. Feeling is not the action, closing is the action. And for a brain like mine, the motivation's already there, the discomfort, right? It's already loud enough. What it needs is not more awareness of the problem, but a specific, like, one rep at a time. What's the next right thing to do so we can practice that solution? Okay. And you guys, if this episode is speaking to you somewhere specific, if the gap I'm describing has a face and a name in your life, will you just share this with the person you might think that needs to hear it? And it's not to call them out, but because you love them enough to put this in front of them. And while you're there, do me a favor, like the episode really quick, subscribe where you're seeing me. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, show a girl some love. If you have not already, leave a written review. I know I ask every time, but I ask every time because the review is what gets the show in front of the next person. Okay. Um, but to keep going, here's the wild card. The one, I don't know, it's a wild card. The gap between who you say you are and how you actually live is not just a personal problem, it's a transmission problem. Everything you're building, whatever that is. So for me, everything I'm building, the podcast, the business, the family, the legacy, the influence, it transmit not what I say, but what I am. And what I am is not determined by my public presentation. It is determined by everything that I do in private. And it's stuff that no one sees. It's the things that will either close the gap or widen it. And the people around me, the people around you, your kids, your clients, your audience, your community, they receive the transmission of what you actually are with a fidelity that bypasses the performance layer entirely. Your kids do not learn from your speeches. They learn from watching what you do when you think they are not watching. They're always watching. Okay. And what they're absorbing is not your stated values. It is the gap between your stated values and your actual behavior. That gap is the curriculum, and they will spend years, probably decades, working through the lessons it taught them. Um, you guys don't stay here because of content. You're here because of what you sense underneath the content, the thing that is either congruent or not, the thing that either matches or doesn't. And those of you that are more finely tuned to this, the ones, who need what I have the most, you know the difference. And it's not even a conscious knowing. It's that your nervous system knows. And a nervous system that senses congruence relaxes into trust. A nervous system that senses the gap, however subtly, however carefully managed, they stay super guarded, super guarded. Um, so, what I'm going to say to you, and it's something I had to learn from myself, is that the most powerful thing you can do for everything you're building right now is not to grow your platform or refine your message or optimize your content. It is to close the gap, to become in the private spaces the person you're describing in the public ones. Because when those two things are the same, when there is no gap, when the transmission is clean, when what people sense underneath your words is exactly what your words are saying, the effect is not incremental. It's exponential. It's the difference between comfort that people consume and content that people are charged by. Jesus had no gap. None, zero. The private person and the public person, they were identical in a way that was genuinely disorienting to the people around him. What he said and what he did and what he was were all the same thing. People felt that. The crowds felt it. The disciples felt it. His enemies felt it. That's why they were so threatened by him, because a person with no gap cannot be manipulated through hypocrisy, cannot be silenced by the exposure of a contradiction, cannot be neutralized by the revelation of a private self that does not match the public one. Could you imagine what they'd have done with the Bible had that been the case? There was nothing to expose. There was nothing to manipulate. There was just the whole truth all the way through. And that wholeness was the most threatening thing anyone in power had ever encountered. And that's the model. That's the rebellion, not the absence of failure. Jesus did not fail at integrity because he was divine. Yes, but also he lived from a place of such complete alignment with his Father that the gap never had anywhere to live. And the invitation to us, the very human, very gap having, anterior something part of our brain firing us, okay, is to move in that direction, not to arrive perfectly, to move one closing of the gap at a time, one private choice that matches the public value, one moment of being the same person in the dark that you are in the light. That's the whole thing, you guys. That's the whole thing. That's what do you do? Do the gap audit, the honest version of that. Pick 3 domains that matter most to you, like whatever that looks like, for example, like your faith, your health, your relationship, your finances, your work, whatever those 3 are. And then be honest about how you're actually living in that domain, matching what you say that you value. Not what your intentions are, but what you actually do. Write the gap down, make it specific, because the gap you can see is the gap you can close. And the gap you manage without naming, well, that bitch lives forever. Second thing, I want you to pick the one gap that if you closed it would have the most downstream effect on everything else. Bitch, I did not say the easy one, the most consequential one. Okay. The one that if you actually lived it consistently would change the transmission and make one specific behavioral commitment around it. Um, I don't want you to set an intention. No, fuck your intentions. I want you to find a specific behavior. I will do the specific thing at this specific time on this specific day. Make it concrete, make it scheduled, make it measurable, because your brain does not respond to vague bullshit commitments. It responds to specific. So write down the specifics. Um, and then I want you to build an end of the day integrity check. It'll take you 60 seconds, just one question. Ask yourself, did the way I live today match the person I'm saying I am? And this is not to shame yourself when the answer is no. It's to keep the gap visible, because visibility is everything. And the gap that stays named stays workable. Um, again, okay, if you keep the gap to yourself, it grows quietly in the dark until it's running shit you can't even explain. So 60 seconds every night, that's the rep. It's how you build the muscle. That's your neuroplasticity, okay? That's the brain being trained one day at a time to notice and close the gap rather than manage and hide, okay? Um be the same person in the dark that you are in the light. And it's not a perfect thing. I'm like, it's never going to be perfect for me. It's not even something I could have done all at once. So I'm just saying one thing at a time. Just move forward, move towards it, close the gap one choice at a time, building the neural architecture of wholeness through repetition, becoming gradually and consistency without announcement. The person whose private life and public life are the same damn thing. That's the rebellion. That's the rebellion, because a world full of people who live in integrity, who are the same in private that they are in public, who close the gap between their stated values and their actual behavior, who cannot be manipulated through hypocrisy because there is no hypocrisy to find. That world is genuinely dangerous to every structure that has been built on the opposite. deep state runs on the gap. Corrupt elite families run in the gap. Systems of control, all of them, run in the gap. And the institutions and the people who will participate in them without asking whether their participation matches their values. Close that gap in your own life first and watch what it does to everything else. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And the truth part, the all the way through, no gap, private and public are the same truth. That's available to you right now. The next choice you make when no one is watching. So please make the right one. If this episode made you feel the things, like the show, subscribe, leave a written review. It takes a few minutes. Make sure you guys go to brandonlynette.com, get on my list. The next few weeks will be my new website roll up. I cannot wait. And don't worry, you will know because I will probably talk about it for a whole episode. It's been such a journey. Make sure you're checking my show out on YouTube. I appreciate that. Get my Liberty patch from the show notes. Again, if you're local, bitch, I will show you the magic of that device. Okay. That's it today. Okay. Be the same person you are in the dark. That's the whole thing.